We are live.
All right, good evening, folks. It is 7 o'clock on Monday, June 13th, and I would like to call the regular meeting of Kimberley City Council to order, held here on the homelands of the Ktunaxa peoples. Welcome. Aside from the rain happening outside, I don't think there's anything too eventful happening that I need to actually have a chat about. So let's get right to it. Maurice, do we have any late items?
There's no late items, Mr. Mayor.
All right, hearing none, could I have a mover to adopt the agenda? Councillor McBain, thank you. Councillor Oakley seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Next up, we have the adoption of the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on May the 24th. Councillor Dallum moves. Councillor Roberts seconds. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. And finally, the minutes of the special meeting held on June the 6th. Mover, please. Councillor McBain, thank you. And Councillor Dallum seconds. Any opposed? That motion is carried. All right, first up tonight, we have a development variance permit for 165 Bank Street. And the motion on the floor is that council approve the development variance. Mover, please. Councillor Kiddo, thank you. Councillor McBain seconds. Discussion. Troy, would you like to give us one more summary?
Yes, I can, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. So this was discussed briefly at our last at the last council meeting, and council approved giving notice of intention to approve this variance. This is a bit of a repeat of a previously approved variance that was previously approved in 2021. Sorry, and this was to allow for a new house to be constructed on the site. The existing or previous house has been moved to another location in town through separate permits and everything. And in this case, they did some revisions to their plan since last summer that has resulted in some minor changes overall to the variances that were previously approved. We have similar variances to the front yard setback and the exterior side setback. In both of those cases, there's just a minor increase in floor area that is requiring the variance. So it's considered an extension of the previously approved variance, but a fairly minor change overall. And then the other item is just to recognize that the roof overhangs are going to project a little closer to the front and side parcel lines there. So there's 3 sections of the bylaw that are being varied for this proposal. Notices were sent out and no submissions have been received from any neighbors or adjacent property owners. So staff are recommending approval of this, and the applicants will be able to proceed with their building permit.
All right, excellent. Thanks for the summary. Council, any questions? Councillor Dallum, go ahead.
Less a question, more of a statement, Mr. Mayor. My biggest reason that I absolutely agree with this is that it doesn't impact any traffic sight lines or anything like that. More just a comment for the public to understand the lack of impact that this really has on anybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dallum. Further, Councillor Oakley.
Is your mic wasn't on?
Troy, just a quick question. Any thing from neighbors? I see there's nothing written, but I just wanted to make sure.
That's correct. No submissions have been received from neighbors.
Thanks.
All right, seeing nothing further, we'll call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried. All right, next up, we have a notice of motion from Councillor Oakley relating to a banner to allow deer complaints to go to the proper place. Councillor Oakley, since you're bringing this forward, how would you like to kind of read the motion that we're bringing forward tonight?
Thank you.
Just leave it.
I move that a full-size banner be displayed from mid-June to mid-July, featuring all the pertinent deer complaint contact information for Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy and Ministry of Land, Water and Resource Stewardship.
So prior to a mover on that, the Ministry of Land, Water and Resource Stewardship is not the ministry responsible for wildlife. It's the Ministry of Forests and kind of whatever that new name is. Fish and Wildlife come under that ministry, I believe.
So I did check today, and when I received some assistance from our city manager to write this up, I wasn't sure on these changes, but so the biologists have been split into the climate change strategy and Ministry of Forests. Like, they're actually divided now. I talked to one of the biologists today.
That's true, but the wildlife responsibility, I believe, has remained with forests.
So Ministry of Forests.
Yeah, Scott or Maurice, can you kind of weigh in on that? Sorry. Well, whatever the new ministry is called, former Flinrod, whatever it's called today.
Yeah.
Katrine Conroy is the minister responsible.
Yeah, that's now Ministry of Land, Water and Resource Stewardship. So they did a name change.
No, it's
No.
actually Ministry.
That's Minister Osborne's ministry.
That's correct. Ministry of Forest does still exist, and that's Katrina Conroy now.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
okay, notwithstanding,
Yes.
we want to make sure that we have the right ministry on the motion.
So what I would like to see, Mr. Mayor, is the wording left as it is. And for staff, if this is approved and becomes a resolution of council, for staff to determine which ministry would be the contact ministry. It's possibly 3 ministries, I'm not sure. But there has to be more than just the RAP line. There's, and that's hopefully what, if this gets on the floor, we'll
Yeah,
discuss it.
fair enough, Darrell. I think though, for the actual resolution itself has to have the correct ministry in there. Otherwise, we're going to have to come back again and kind of redo it. Is that not correct? Help me out here. Either corporate officer or CAO.
This is a fairly recent change. This is a fairly recent change to the ministries, and we'd have to do a bit of research on that.
So what do you suggest as far as the motion is concerned?
I have a suggestion.
Well, we could say to the appropriate ministry.
That's it.
Okay, was that what you were going to suggest? Okay, good call.
Well, or the other option is to add Ministry of Forests to this as a friendly amendment. Then you're covering all the bases, because biologists are positioned in different ministries now.
So if we say the appropriate ministries, though,
Okay.
it's a little less complex.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a friendly amendment to
Okay.
say appropriate ministries.
Okay.
Okay. Is there a mover? Councillor McBain?
Yep.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Kiddo. Okay, discussion. Go ahead, Darrell.
Okay, thanks. Factoring in all the different changes, obviously we'll have to work around that a tiny bit. The reason I wanted this to come in front of everyone in council tonight is that I think it's really important to recognize the monumental history that the city of Kimberley has had with various ministries working hand in hand to deal with deer populations for at least 11 years now. And so it goes way back. And I think it's important to educate. So there's a couple of reasons I want to do this. Number one is education. I think people need to understand that the deer, any deer, are the responsibility of the province of BC. And that the city actually was very gracious in working with everybody in past years to try to mitigate a problem of population density of mule deer in town. So number one is education for folks to understand that these are actually the responsibility, the ungulates are the responsibility of the province. And the other piece is in a crisis, when there's an incident, for people to be able to very clearly see who they're to contact. And that's the tricky part for us, because there's lots of phone numbers. I phoned I phoned down today to Irene's number. It's discontinued now. That's so that, you know, we're going to have information if this passes that's going to be relevant, and that someone who's very frustrated with the deer incidents doesn't just phone a number and get a recording or something like that. That'll be not good. So there's that piece. There's a safety issue. I think it's, you know, given that our hands are tied with different things around ungulates and management, I think it's, you know, for us to do this for citizens to be prepared if they need to get a hold of someone right away. I think it's a safety issue. So we need to do this. It's important. And there's another final piece that I'd like to add is that because of the city's amazing, you know, what we did as a municipality for all those years was unprecedented. A lot of communities in the province did not stand and work alongside with different ministries to mitigate a problem, which was high deer densities. And so now that we're, you know, forced into a corner with all of this, I think it needs to be set up in a way to put pressure on the province to step up to the plate. And if they're not going to allow us to do stuff to mitigate the population density, then it's up, they need to stand up and step up and come and talk to us about what their plan is. So there's a little bit of pressure I'd like to see.
Okay, Councillor McBain.
Well, first of all, I really appreciate Councillor Oakley bringing this to the table and doing it in a very diplomatic way. So I can turn the rhetoric up a little bit. Yeah, I think there needs to be a sense of urgency from the province. I think it's a huge safety issue. What we see in our town right now and I'll use an example. You know, last night, as early as last night, there was a fawn, a brand new, less than a week old fawn underneath my front door, and my wife and I just happened to notice a doe running off every other deer in our neighborhood really, really aggressively. And we decided to pull the kids in. We knew, and the dog, and we knew there was a fawn around. We did not know it was right under our front door until yesterday, or until we decided to go into the house. I'm extremely concerned about the likelihood of a little kid or somebody really vulnerable is going to get seriously injured. I mean, it's the way that this doe was behaving just around other deer. If that was a kid or a dog, they would not have lasted very long. And you know, I don't want to. You know, I think the city has done a really good job, as Councillor Oakley has said, in trying to do what the city can do, but ultimately the province is responsible, and there needs to be a sense of urgency. You know, before something happens, there's no reason you can't be a little bit more proactive before something happens, because all probability is showing that something will happen. And it might not be to an adult. It's going to be, it could happen to somebody who's really vulnerable. And boy, I don't think any of us would really want to see that. And I just think it's getting to a breaking point, and something needs to be done.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple of points to make. First of all, I'm wholly in favor of us calling attention to this in a way that might garner some response that will work for us. My example that I would use is looking out my living room window, which is a little bit above a road that goes down the hill, and watching a man come up that street in his automated wheelchair, and leased to his wheelchair is his service dog. And I can see a deer ready to attack him because, unknown to him, she has a little one nearby. And my husband was outside, and I shouted out the window and I said, "You distract that deer." That deer was headed to that man in the wheelchair with his dog, who was leashed to the wheelchair, and neither one of them had the ability to get out of the way. And it was an accident waiting to happen. That's my example of what we're talking about everywhere we go this last week. I know it's deer time. Everybody knows it's deer time, but the things that are happening are just crazy. I have a question about the motion, though. I'd like to know what you mean by the banner. Are you referring to the banner that we put across the road? That would not, if we use that banner for 2 months, that we would not then have the option of using other banners? Or further to that, are there ways that we can use our online system and our ads in our local newspaper to provide that information as well? Using what Pam Walsh does to communicate some of this stuff, not just with a banner, which might be located somewhere, but let's not put the banner in the only place that other people have to use the banner as well. I know it's visible, but sometimes they like visibility as well. So maybe there's an alternative there.
Councillor Goodwin.
Yeah, I would sort of like to second that. I fully support trying to make the province take more responsibility in educating people about who's responsible. I think a fixed banner, we've just talked about how the ministries are changing, the phone numbers change. If you invest in a large fixed banner and next year all the information on it is irrelevant, that would be a bit of a waste of your time. But I think the digital sign out in front of the arena, there are, a number of things that our communications coordinator does that I think would be useful. I'm just not sure a single large banner over the road would be the best way to get the message out.
Councillor Kiddo.
We've taken a fair bit of responsibility to notify the public of fawns in the area with the sandwich boards. Double-edged sword there, I think, because we take that responsibility, I think that sends a message to the community that it might be our responsibility as well. So I'd suggest that those sandwich boards need to have some information on them as well, that it is the province's responsibility and that we're just providing a warning, and that any concerns need to be going to that number or email address.
Thank you.
But very supportive of this. Thanks, Councillor Oakley.
Further? Councillor Dallin,
Thank you.
please weigh in.
Well, I mean, I agree with everyone at the table. It all, truly is necessary. I think the challenge with having the particular banner is that, as you mentioned earlier, that phone number suddenly isn't accessible anymore. So, with the newspaper and online, we can maintain up-to-date information easier. So I'm fully in support of this. I think that getting that proper information into the hands of the people is very important. I think that an amendment of how to get it out there is probably the best way, but I thank you for bringing this forward.
Councillor McBain.
I was just going to say on that, I would propose to Councillor Oakley, we make him an amendment in using the new digital sign in the Platzl and the one at the Civic Center, basically any digital media that we have available currently, in lieu of the banner. But as far as that, I'm concerned, that I'm in support of the messaging.
So I think the banner is really a proxy for public communication, and there's no question that the media that we have available to us on how we do things, whether it's Facebook or the website, we've got our regular media, whether it's the bulletin or Eno. I mean, we've got a lot of ways to get information out to more people than having the banner across Wallinger Avenue. However, the point being made is that how do we get that information out there in the broadest way possible? So there are a couple of things that a couple of points that I would just like to make. The time that we should have been having this conversation was in January. Arguably December, when we could actually do something about it. I mean, realistically, in the middle of fawning season right now, nobody is going to do anything. It means we have to take out, somebody has to take out, not we, but the province has to take out does and fawns all across town. I'm not sure exactly how that would play itself out. I can't imagine the province agreeing to do something like that. So timing, I think, is an issue. If you wait until it's the heat of the moment, it makes it difficult to do something. And yet if it's not in the heat of the moment, you don't get the kind of response, that you need. There are a couple of different kinds of aggressive deer, as we've known over time. Outside of fawning season, and the aggressive deer have been the aggressive habituated deer that we want to get out of the community. Right now, every single doe in the community is an aggressive deer because they've got a fawn. And it's not dissimilar to any other species protecting its young. And it's all over the community. I mean, it's absolutely terrible what's going on right now. We're in a situation where people are passing the buck. It's a hot potato that nobody wants to talk to. I had feedback that the person at the end of the rap line actually told somebody phoning in that this was a municipal responsibility. Outrageously. I find it difficult to even believe that somebody would say something like that. I also anecdotally have heard that the conservation officers are saying that that regardless of us claiming this to be a public safety issue, because in the legislation, bears are deemed dangerous, so they have to act. Deer are not, so they don't. The conservation officers are part of the environment ministry, not part of the wildlife ministry. And everybody within those two ministries, plus us as the triangle, have fingers pointing in all different directions. And it's driving people, well, it's driving us crazy, but it's driving people crazy as well. Who do you call? And when do you call them? It's probably been, because of all the work that we've done on this over the years, this has to be one of our most frustrating moments in having, it's like nothing has happened in the last 10 years. It's like we've done nothing. We are back to 2012 again. And something needs to be done about it, but pardon me, but realistically, that being done isn't going to happen, during this fawning season. We have to position ourselves for the fall. And I think a big part of that, as Councillor Oakley has said, is definitely public education. But the public education on who's responsible for what, I think will get a much broader distribution by some of the other media that the city has available to it. Councillor Roberts.
But Mr. Mayor, I think the only time that you can actually record public outrage is when they're raging. You can collect that data, they can collect that data, and then you
No
take
question.
it forward,
But that's all that's going to happen right now. And people are demanding action. They're not demanding, tell me who to call. They're demanding action. And that action realistically is not going to happen over the next 3 or 4 weeks. I wish that it could. Believe me, if we could wave a magic wand and make that happen, that would be awesome. But we need to set expectations properly. It's not going to, and we need to make sure that people know the dangers that are out there with respect, especially to the dogs. I mean, let's face it, we've doubled the population of dogs through COVID. And it's not realistic to expect people not to walk their dogs for a month because, does are having their fawns. It's a terrible situation. Go ahead, Darrell.
So I just wanted to add the reason that I didn't want to do a banner in January or in the winter months is that we have been waiting, and we have, as a municipality, been told by members of the various ministries that there was something forthcoming. I feel I've been very patient, and I'm now out of patience. I'd like to see a banner in the biggest letters, fluorescent, with numbers. There needs to be pressure on these guys. We've waited now for a plan. When the ministry has had several years now to deal with this, they've had several years to come forward with a plan. The province of British Columbia has not sent anyone into these council chambers or come visit us and talk about this. And so I think it's important to have that phone number when people are having an instance, that if it's the RAP line or whatever, there should be multiple points of contact to the province, to people that are supposed to be responsible for this. So now we're in a pickle. We probably have 200 deer in town, and and it's causing problems. But it's not. I'm not saying we ask for them to do a cull right now. Obviously, that's not going to happen. And conservation officers, through their mandate, you're right, Mr. Mayor. They don't do anything about deer. unless they're severely injured or whatever, and they shoot them. But, you know, I've had conversations with them, and I don't expect them to do anything, conservation officers. I do not have an expectation that they're going to do something about this. The only way out of this is for a resource officer through the Parks Ministry to be contracted eventually and trained to dart deer in January and euthanize them and bring the numbers down. And that has not been allowed yet. But, you know, that's the only solution I can see that everyone's going to be sort of okay with. You know, it's all the groups, right? So in the meantime, I think it's important, you know, and digital media is great. And I was hoping to have this, you know, I wanted this to come forward for a discussion tonight. A banner, if you don't want to do banner, we don't have the ability, or we're taking away from, you know, Lobster Fest. Well, they've already had Lobster Fest, so that's okay. But the, you know, I understand you don't want to take away from someone's 2-week slot or whatever. I get it. But, you know, I'd like something much more visible than just the arena, you know, or something in the Platzel. I think it needs to be right out there. And it's time for bureaucrats within the province to feel some pressure to get something going. I think you know, our ministers, I mean, you know, Minister Osborne, she's the former mayor of Tofino. She knows what it's like to, you know, be in a municipality and be a little bit frustrated with something to do with the province. I would hope that she'll help us out here. That's all I want to say there.
Further? Scott, do you have any comments?
I agree with certain councillors that have said the banner is a bit of an outdated way to get the word out. The group that would be being bumped would be the high school grads. They've just got their banner up here today, or went up yesterday. But, you know, we do have a greater reach through our social media, and our electronic signboards are a bit of a physical example of that. But I think we can get greater reach by blasting these numbers through our various channels.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Okay, so the motion on the floor was that we need to make an amendment to the motion. Hopefully a friendly amendment, so we don't have to rewrite the whole thing. But rather than talk about full-size banner to be displayed from, if we can replace that to with something like
Yeah, multimedia.
That via our multimedia communications channels, this information, you know, basically be put out there or something to that effect. Yeah. And from there, that all pertinent deer contact information from the appropriate ministries, you know, be done. You got enough to work with there, Maurice?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, you bet. They're what? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Speak up or forever hold your peace. Okay, next up we have the check run in the amount of $847,942.85 to be approved as paid. Councillor McBain, thank you. Second, Councillor Roberts. Do we have any non-routines to point out? Go ahead, Councillor Roberts.
There is a listing of $64,000 to Dedham Ford, which appears to be one of the new fleet
Okay,
purchases.
that would be a non-routine, but awesome expenditure. Anything else? All right, hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, we have a few items of correspondence tonight. Can we, well, let's deal with item 1.1. It was regarding a request for a letter of support. Move receipt, please. Councillor McBain, thank you. Councillor Goodwin seconds. Do we have any discussion on this? Go ahead, Councillor McBain.
Facial expression.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read this and I just don't know if we can support. Looking for just for partnerships. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out what exactly we would be doing here.
Councillor Goodwin.
I'm comfortable with just receiving this and not going any further.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
My concern is that it may or may not be viewed as supporting a business. So seeing as the city doesn't support businesses, I would want to stay on the sidelines.
Yeah, did I see in there where this was a not-for-profit?
Yeah, anyways, that was the same
It was a little
concern I had.
confusing.
I couldn't figure out exactly where the line was, so
Okay.
that's where I was
Motion on the floor is move or seat. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Item 2.1, the email from Bob Johnstone, basically inviting everybody to the Meadowbrook Community Association celebration. Move or seat. Councillor Kiddo, thank you. Councillor McBain seconds. All those in favor? Motion is carried. And then finally, the letter with regard to the economic development, what were they calling it? A roundtable, for lack of a better term. Move or seat. Councillor Goodwin, thank you. Councillor Dallum seconds. All those in favor? Motion is carried. All right, that brings us to an end of the regular agenda. We do have an in-camera this evening. But before we get to there, we need to make ourselves available to members of the public who may want to ask questions about anything we've talked about here tonight. The number to call if you do have questions is 800-741-7180. And the meeting number is 2490-289-1984. So if you dial that now, the microphone will be muted for the public during the question period. Okay, while we're waiting to see if anybody calls, we'll do a roundtable on councillor items. We'll start with Councillor Dallum.
Thank you,
should be
Mr. Mayor.
ready. I mean, you knew it was coming one way or the other.
Yes, absolutely. Kimberley Trail Society continues to just put out an amazing amount of work. Their staff is continued to strengthen and grow, and honestly, like, the trails are just well taken care of. Round the Mountain was just last weekend. It seemed to be a fantastic event. I had some friends compete there and best themselves. My next meeting is tomorrow for the Kimberley Arts, and nothing else official to report.
All right, thank you for that. Councillor Goodwin.
Nothing to report. We have a strategic planning session for the Health Center Society Thursday night, and there'll be hopefully something coming out of that
Coming this Thursday.
this Thursday.
Okay, awesome. Councillor Goodwin. I mean, Oakley. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two items. Last week, I had great honor and privilege to have a meeting actually in these chambers with two grade 11 students from Selkirk that were doing a project for their social justice class. And they were looking at climate change and what the city is doing and, different folks in town are working towards. It was a very good discussion. The two students were really enjoyable to be with for the hour they're here. And I wanted to thank Scott and staff for organizing this room and making sure it was ready for us to come in with their camera gear and stuff like that. So thank you, Scott. Appreciate that. It went very
Awesome.
The other thing, last Thursday, I went to an evening at Selkirk, for their strategic planning for the district. They had a big planning session up there, looking for feedback, and it was very well done. I got to meet the superintendent and a whole bunch of principals from the area, And really quite enjoyed that. I got to sit in with the McKim planning with a principal from McKim and got to meet him and thought it was quite good. It was nice to see that. There's you know, it's a big challenge. They're growing. The district is growing, and they're this fall, every single class in McKim, there's 408 students there. Every class will be split. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. So anyway, it was a very interesting evening, and they were much appreciated that someone from City Council came up.
Yeah, cool. That was not open to the public. This was
It was an
the,
invite. Yeah.
yeah, this was
Yeah.
the school district itself.
Yeah.
Councillor Goodwin.
Councillor Oakley, did they talk at all about capital planning? Are they going to expand schools or build schools or?
No, the priority was actually around setting school priorities, top 3 priorities for how they're going to operate. It wasn't around capital. For example, McKim, their number 1 priority is to be inclusive to all students and to everybody. And they talked a lot about inclusivity, how you do that as a community, a school. It was actually very good. I thought it was good, but nothing around the capital at all. No.
Councillor Kiddo.
Keeping us guessing time, Mr. Mayor. Nothing official. I have a Tourism Kimberley meeting tomorrow afternoon, so we haven't met for a while, so that should be good. But been caught up in the big deal of grad in this town. I always knew it was a big deal, but when you got one of your own going through, it really hits home. So yeah, best of luck to all the grads coming up for prom coming up on Friday, and for the ceremony on Saturday. Also, we had the last school performance at the Selkirk concert last week, which was just excellent. And Mr. Sven Hyder, what a great teacher that guy is! Like, really fantastic culture. Yeah, awards night tomorrow night. So yeah, it's all happening.
Awesome.
And
Thanks.
Round the Mountains this weekend.
Yeah, it's Sunday.
But they opened the trail last weekend. They cleared it out.
It's a different event that's crossing my brain. Sorry.
So get
Round the
up
Mountain.
there for Round the
The
Mountain.
route is clear for Round the Mountain.
Yeah.
My apologies.
If you're not going to grad, go around the mountain.
Councillor McBain.
Nothing official to report other than the strategic planning session with the health center. So that's
All
pretty
right.
much it for me.
All right, cool. Sandra.
Well, I was
You were
gone
away.
most of the month. I left on May the 3rd, but I'll tell you, when I came back, I am absolutely full of wonder. I cannot believe what's going on in this town in this month, between segues and ways of getting through and ways of getting around. Every time I turn around, I can't go there because somebody's building something huge, and others have got stuff dug up, and down there there's lumber, and over there there's a fence. I can't believe how busy it is.
You
Holy
must live
doo.
in town site.
Well, yeah, I have to come by it all the time, yeah. No, but even just as I drove around looking for some things the other day, and it's just everywhere throughout the whole community. Good on us, guys.
Awesome. So in brief, Scott and I and Pam had a meeting with the Chamber and Tourism Kimberley, talking about the cuckoo clock. It's about time we kind of anteed up on what's happening with that particular iconic piece of Kimberley. It needs to be refurbished, it needs to be rebuilt, it needs to be something. And we had preliminary conversations on exactly what that might look like. And the Chamber is out looking for grants to be able to apply. I attended the Selkirk Capstone program event this past week. It's where grads have put their PowerPoint presentation, or they're presenting via PowerPoint their plan for the next short, mid, and long term. This year, 5 years, 10 years, and I just love this event. I've been doing it for quite a few years now, and boy, I'll tell you, it is really awesome to see the students talk about next steps and the anxieties and the anticipation and everything that goes along with that. I really appreciate the school asking me to participate in that. I met with the RCMP, with both Sergeant Woodcox and with his boss to talk a little bit about what's happening, our priorities, the ones that we have identified, and progress that's being made talking about the budget. And in particular, we talked about the challenges they're having right now with members that are away on sick leave. It's not just Kimberly. Cranbrook has some real challenges, and it's pretty much all over. The RCMP are really challenged with manpower, or with people power, I should say. So it was a good conversation. I had my first brown bag lunch in 2.5 years last Wednesday. Yeah, I didn't expect anybody to show up, and I ended up with 3 people keenly interested in things that are going on in the city. So hopefully that will ramp its way back up. And I've said many times, as long as people want to come, we'll leave the door open for them to do that. I met with the Lindsay Park Grade 3 class with Doreen Sharp and her class up at Kamiko Gardens, I guess about a week ago now. They had all kinds of questions with regard to Kamiko Gardens and, the rumor mill and kind of all of the misinformation that's being spread around. So it was an opportunity to meet with them at Kamiko Gardens. They got to show me how important this was to them and where their garden was as part of that. And it was an opportunity for me to, to be candid about what exactly is happening up there, not only with the kids, but also with Doreen as well. Her communication with the parents is just as important as the kids. And I had a couple of days of RDEK meetings, which were, for the most part, uneventful this time around. We didn't have to talk about the Galloway lands in Fernie. So that made it somewhat uneventful. I also want to comment on, Sandra alluded to the things going on in town. There's lots of construction, but we also have just a ton of activities that are starting to crop up again. You alluded to Lobster Fest, which happened last weekend. Nigel, you talked about the Selkirk Awards Night, which is on Tuesday, which I will be there as well. The graduation on Saturday. We've got the first farmers market opening on Thursday and Round the Mountain next Sunday. And that's only in the next week. I think we're in for a very, very busy summer, and everybody's got smiles on their faces again. I'm hopeful that it will take that grumpiness that has been in all of us here for the last while and lay it aside for good. Okay, that's it. Councillor Dallin.
So I had to double check, and my friend actually did a pre-Round the Mountain this last weekend, and that's what threw me right off. So
Okay, well,
little embarrassing, but I
You-
appreciate that, I was corrected.
you don't necessarily have to report on that, Thanks for the clarification. Okay, Maurice, do we have any
We have no callers.
callers? All right. It's a good thing that motion wasn't distributed more broadly to the public. We may have had a few people calling in. Okay, we do have an in-camera, and I need a motion to move in camera. Councillor McBain, thank you. Councillor Kiddo, thank you. All those in favor? Right, the motion is carried. We will take 1 minute to disconnect from YouTube, and we will start the meeting.